Have you ever said something in the heat of the moment that you later wished you could take back? Or made a quick decision that cost you time, money, or trust? Most people don't realize that the difference between an average life and an extraordinary one often comes down to one invisible habit: the ability to pause before you react. That pause, that small moment of thinking before responding, is worth more than $1 million over a lifetime, because it saves you from the kind of mistakes no money can fix. You see, life doesn't usually destroy us in big explosions. It chips away at us in tiny moments. A careless word, an emotional reaction, an impulsive choice. One wrong sentence can damage a relationship that took years to build. One hasty decision can wipe out months of progress. But here's the truth. The most successful people in the world didn't avoid problems because they were lucky. They learned to pause before reacting. That pause is the secret chamber where wisdom lies. The ability to think before you react is not taught in schools, not written in job descriptions, and rarely discussed in success seminars. Yet it quietly separates those who rise from those who crumble under pressure. Because the person who can control their reaction controls their direction. In this speech, I'm going to share with you how this $1 million habit works, why it's the foundation of emotional intelligence, the key to better decisions, and the reason some people always seem calm under chaos while others fall apart. And if you stay till the end, you'll know exactly how to develop this habit so deeply that nothing and no one can hijack your peace again. The pause between stimulus and response is one of the most powerful spaces a human being can ever discover. It's invisible, quiet, and often overlooked. But inside that tiny moment lives the difference between wisdom and regret, growth and destruction, peace and chaos. Life throws at us a never-ending stream of situations. People say things that hurt, unexpected problems appear, plans collapse, and emotions flare up. In those moments, most people are swept away by impulse. They react instantly, driven by the emotion of the moment, rather than the vision of the future. They say things they don't mean, make decisions they later regret, and hurt relationships they actually value. But a rare few have learned the discipline of the pause. They've trained themselves to recognize that space, to hold it, to think before they move. And that one habit becomes the quiet foundation of their success. Most people think the greatest power in life is speed, quick thinking, fast action, rapid response. And in some cases it is. But in emotional and mental maturity, speed is the enemy of wisdom. Quickness without control is chaos wearing the mask of confidence. The truth is, your reaction is your signature. It tells the world what kind of person you are when you're under pressure. Anyone can appear wise when things are calm, but when the storm comes, your reactions reveal your real discipline. The pause allows you to rewrite the story in real time. It gives you just enough distance to choose a better response than the one your emotions are screaming for. Think about how often regret enters our lives, disguised as quickness. A moment of anger, a split second of judgment, an impulse decision that felt right but turned wrong. Those moments are small but expensive. Every regret has a timestamp that traces back to a reaction made without reflection. The pause is the space where reflection gets a chance to speak. It's that breath before the reply, that moment of silence before you send the message, that hesitation before you hit post. In that pause, your mind catches up with your heart. You get to ask, what outcome do I really want here? And is this reaction going to move me toward peace or away from it? The pause isn't weakness. It's the highest form of strength because it's strength under control. The person who can hold back the urge to react has already mastered the first rule of leadership. Never let your emotions make decisions for you. When you pause, you are declaring, I am not a slave to the moment. You are choosing to live from principles, not pressure. You are showing life that you will not be controlled by what happens around you, only by what you have decided within you. That kind of strength makes people listen differently when you speak. It makes others trust you more because they can sense your steadiness. Now, developing the awareness of that pause requires practice. It doesn't come naturally. The human mind is wired for defense and survival, not calm reasoning. When something triggers us, our emotional system takes over, the ancient instinct to fight, flee, or freeze. But here's the beauty: our minds have evolved to outthink that instinct. You can literally rewire yourself to pause before reacting. It starts with catching yourself in the act, noticing the rising emotion, the tightening of the chest, the quickening of breath, the flood of thoughts demanding action. In that awareness, you can step back and remind yourself that a reaction is permanent, but the emotion is temporary. That one realization alone can save you from years of unnecessary conflict. Thinkers and leaders who have built lasting legacies often had this one thing in common. They were calm under fire. They knew how to delay their response until their thoughts were clear. They didn't let others pull them into emotional traps. They learned that silence is a strategy, not a weakness. They understood that reacting is easy, but responding requires mastery. A response comes from a place of clarity. A reaction comes from confusion. A response builds while a reaction destroys. And the pause gives you time to choose between the two. It's the space where you can shift from being emotionally reactive to being intentionally reflective. Instead of saying, "I can't believe this happened to me," you begin to think, "What is this moment teaching me?" That shift transforms chaos into wisdom. It's the mental alchemy that turns emotional triggers into opportunities for growth. Because when you learn to hold your reaction, you begin to see things other people miss. You start noticing patterns, motives, and meanings behind behavior. You no longer take everything personally. You become an observer, not a victim. The pause also gives you power in communication. Imagine two people arguing, both talking, neither listening. The louder they get, the less they hear. But the one who pauses, listens, and observes controls the conversation. They see where the other person is coming from. They can choose words that disarm instead of inflame. That's how trust is built, not through domination, but through calm presence. The person who pauses doesn't need to prove they're right. They're focused on doing what's wise. And wisdom always outlasts ego. There's another hidden value in the pause. It protects your reputation. The way you handle pressure becomes your character in the eyes of others. Every boss, every partner, every friend is silently observing how you react when things go wrong. Lose your cool once, and people remember it for years. Stay calm, and people trust you even in chaos. The pause keeps you consistent. It allows you to make decisions that reflect your values, not your emotions. It's not about pretending you don't feel anger or frustration. It's about giving those feelings a moment to cool before they decide your next move. Some people think that reacting fast makes them appear strong, but it's the opposite. True strength is the ability to stay grounded when everything around you is shaking. The pause is a form of power that's invisible but deeply respected. You can feel it when someone enters a room and carries calmness like armor. They don't rush to speak. They don't rush to defend. They don't rush to prove, because they've learned that control is more impressive than speed. That's what the pause gives you: control over yourself. And when you control yourself, you control your world. It's worth remembering that the pause isn't about inaction. It's about intentional action. It doesn't mean you suppress emotion. It means you guide it. You take the raw energy of anger and turn it into assertiveness. You take disappointment and turn it into determination. You take fear and turn it into focus. That transformation only happens when you give yourself space to think. Without that pause, emotion remains energy without direction, powerful but destructive. With it, emotion becomes purpose, powerful and productive. When you start practicing this habit, something interesting happens. Your life slows down internally, even if it moves fast externally. You begin to experience a clarity that others mistake for luck. Opportunities come not because you're faster, but because you're clearer. People listen to you more because your words come from thought, not from impulse. You begin to feel peace in situations that once made you panic. That's the hidden treasure in the pause. It gives you back your power, one moment at a time. And that's why the pause isn't just a habit, it's a philosophy. It's the belief that your reaction shapes your reality. Every time you hold your peace, instead of losing it, you're shaping a more stable, more powerful, more focused version of yourself. Each pause becomes a brick in the foundation of emotional wealth. It's the invisible work that builds visible success. The person who pauses doesn't just think before reacting. They create before collapsing, lead before lashing out, and grow before giving up. Because in the pause lives the person you're capable of becoming. Most people walk through life unaware of how much their reactions are costing them. They assume that emotions are free, that anger, frustration, or impatience come and go without consequence. But every reaction carries a hidden price tag. Every time you lose your temper, speak too quickly, or make a decision out of emotion instead of intention, you pay for it. Sometimes immediately, sometimes over years. The cost might not always be in dollars, but it's always there: lost respect, broken trust, missed opportunities, or a reputation that quietly erodes over time. The wealthiest minds understand this truth, that emotional control is financial control, relational control, and self-control all woven together. The person who can manage their reactions protects their greatest assets: their time, energy, focus, and credibility. Think about how many moments of regret in life start with one small reaction. A heated argument that ended a friendship, a careless word that damaged a career, a quick decision that wasted months of effort. If you trace the source of failure, disappointment, or even guilt, it often begins with a moment when emotion won the race against reason. Reactions may feel small, but they ripple through every area of life. You can't build a strong structure on shaky emotions. A quick reaction might feel satisfying in the moment. It gives you a burst of relief or power, but that relief fades, and the consequences remain. Emotional control is one of the most underestimated forms of intelligence. People admire intellect, strategy, and creativity, but the quiet strength that keeps those qualities steady under pressure is emotional discipline. The ability to stay calm when others lose it, to think clearly when others panic, to remain patient when everything feels urgent. That's what separates professionals from amateurs, leaders from followers, the composed from the chaotic. Emotional control doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop letting feelings dictate what you do next. It means you let your values lead your reactions, not your moods. When you understand how expensive reactions are, you begin to treat them like currency. You realize that every outburst, every impulsive move, is a withdrawal from your future. You spend energy you could have invested in progress. You lose peace you could have used for creativity. You burn bridges that would have carried you farther down the road. The discipline to pause before reacting is like financial discipline. Both protect your resources from waste. A wealthy person doesn't spend money without thinking. A wise person doesn't spend emotion without purpose. Consider what happens in business or leadership. One harsh reaction from a manager can demotivate a team for months. One poorly chosen word in a meeting can destroy trust that took years to build. The most respected leaders are not those who never get angry, but those who never let anger steer the wheel. They've trained themselves to notice the moment emotion rises and to hold it. They let reason return before they respond. That's why people follow them. They don't bring chaos to the table. They bring calm, and calm is magnetic. It makes people feel safe, and safety builds loyalty. On the personal side, reactions can ruin relationships faster than neglect ever could. A single moment of uncontrolled emotion, a word said in sarcasm, a tone filled with resentment, a door slammed in anger, can scar the heart of someone who trusted you. And sometimes it's not even about what was said, but about what was revealed, that you were willing to hurt someone just to release tension. When you realize this, you start to see how precious emotional restraint is. Love, respect, friendship. They all thrive in the presence of control. The people who love you deserve the best version of you, not the version that explodes under pressure. Even your career depends on your reactions more than your skills. A person with average talent but exceptional composure often goes farther than someone brilliant who can't control their impulses. The marketplace rewards emotional maturity because when everything goes wrong, and it will, people look for stability. They look for someone who can stand in the storm and not lose sight of the bigger picture. That's what emotional control gives you vision when others are blinded by emotion. There's also a deeper cost to reactions that many never consider, the internal one. Every time you react emotionally, you drain your inner energy. You create stress that lingers. You replay the moment in your head, wishing you had done differently. You start doubting yourself, and that doubt grows into hesitation the next time. Over time, those little regrets pile up, and they begin to eat away at your confidence. The person who can't control their reaction slowly becomes a stranger to themselves. They start apologizing more than progressing. They start explaining instead of executing. Emotional control is not just about how you deal with others. It's how you preserve your own power. The cost of reaction isn't just about losing control of a moment. It's about losing the momentum of your life. Because every time you react emotionally, you take your focus off what truly matters. You get caught in the small battles while the war for your future goes unattended. The people who win in life have learned to let go of small things quickly. They don't fight every fight. They don't answer every insult. They don't chase every argument. They understand that reacting is like paying interest on a loan you never needed to take. It gives you nothing back, but it costs you peace. Now, think about what happens when you stop reacting and start responding. You reclaim time. You save energy. You start making choices from logic instead of emotion. Your decisions become more strategic. You begin to see situations from multiple angles, not just the one your feelings are shouting from. You earn respect from others because your calmness communicates confidence. People trust you more because they see that you're not swayed by every gust of emotion. You become someone others rely on when things fall apart. That reliability becomes your reputation, and your reputation becomes your opportunity. When you practice emotional restraint, you're not suppressing emotion, you're channeling it. Anger becomes drive. Frustration becomes focus. Sadness becomes empathy. Fear becomes caution. All those emotions are powerful forces when directed properly. Without direction, they destroy. With direction, they create. And the pause, that moment before you react, is the steering wheel that directs them. Emotional maturity is a competitive advantage because it allows you to stay consistent in an inconsistent world. While others swing between highs and lows, you remain steady, and steadiness compounds. The calm mind sees more, hears more, learns faster, and recovers sooner. The calm person gets more done because they waste less time repairing what emotion broke. That's why this is called a $1 million habit, because over a lifetime, the returns are enormous. You save relationships that others destroy. You keep opportunities others lose. You gain trust others waste. Most people lose their edge, not because they stop learning, but because they start reacting. They get offended too quickly, discouraged too easily, defensive too fast. They let emotion interrupt their evolution. But if you can remain composed while the world rushes around you, you gain an advantage that no degree, no connection, no talent can give you. The power to make clear decisions in unclear situations. That is the mark of every great achiever, every wise leader, every strong character. They mastered the art of thinking before reacting. The irony is, the more you practice emotional restraint, the freer you become. You stop being at the mercy of what others say or do. You stop letting circumstances dictate your mood. You become your own source of peace. You become unshakable, not because life got easier, but because you learn to stop paying for every emotional invitation it sends. You learn to let small things pass so you can stay focused on big things. And that's how success grows quietly. not through constant motion, but through consistent composure. Every moment you save from reaction is a moment you can invest in reflection. Every word you hold back is an ounce of energy you can use for something that matters. Every situation you handle with calm instead of chaos strengthens your inner foundation. You begin to see that control isn't about holding others accountable. It's about holding yourself to a higher standard. You no longer live on emotional impulse, you live on intentional choice. That's the invisible transformation that builds unshakable confidence and silent power, the kind of wealth that doesn't show up in your wallet, but in your peace, your presence, and your progress. Developing the habit of thinking before you react is not a single decision you make once. It's a discipline you build one situation at a time. It's not about never feeling angry or upset again. It's about not letting those feelings make your choices for you. This habit requires awareness, patience, and repetition. It begins quietly, with the simple recognition that your reactions are not fixed, that you always have a moment of choice, even if it feels invisible. Most people live their lives unaware of that space between emotion and action. They assume that feeling equals doing, that if they feel frustrated, they must express it. If they feel hurt, they must defend. If they feel insulted, they must retaliate. But that's not true. You can feel deeply and still respond wisely. You can experience emotion fully and still stay in control of your response. That's where your greatest power lies. The first step is awareness. You can't master what you don't notice. Most people are unaware of their automatic reactions because they've been rehearsing them for years. Anger, impatience, defensiveness. These are habits just like anything else. They were practiced, reinforced, and repeated until they became reflexes. So the first task is to interrupt that reflex by noticing it. Start by paying attention to what triggers you. What situations make your emotions flare up? Who are the people that seem to pull the worst reactions out of you? What words or tones make you defensive? Awareness is like turning on a light in a dark room. It doesn't solve the problem immediately, but it lets you see what you're dealing with. The more aware you become, the more you start to see the pattern behind your reactions. You begin to realize that most of your emotional responses are not about the moment at all. They're echoes of old habits, past experiences, and unhealed moments that keep replaying themselves through new situations. When awareness grows, choice appears. You begin to recognize that every emotion carries two paths, reaction or response. The reaction is automatic. It's your old self acting on instinct. The response is intentional. It's your new self choosing growth. Each time you pause, you widen the space between those two paths. That pause might only be a few seconds at first, but that's enough. In those few seconds, you can breathe, think, and decide. Breathing may sound simple, but it's one of the most powerful tools you have. When emotion rises, the breath is the bridge that brings you back to balance. One deep breath gives your mind a chance to catch up with your emotion. It interrupts the pattern of reactivity and gives your intelligence room to speak. It's in that breath that you can ask yourself, what outcome do I want from this moment? Or, how will this reaction serve me? Questions like these redirect your mind from impulse to intention. The next step is discipline. Discipline is the ability to do what's best instead of what's easiest. And when emotions are high, reacting is always easier than thinking. Discipline trains you to choose the pause even when it feels unnatural. It's the moment when you tell yourself, not yet. When every part of you wants to shout back, defend, or act. That's self. Restraint is not weakness. It's strength under control. It's the skill of emotional maturity, being able to feel something strongly without letting it control your direction. Think of it like lifting a mental weight. Every time you resist the urge to react, you strengthen your emotional muscles. It may feel uncomfortable at first because you're resisting an old habit, but with repetition, it becomes natural. The pause transforms from something you have to remember into something you simply do. Repetition is what turns awareness and discipline into character. The more you practice the pause, the more your mind begins to associate calm with power. You start to see the benefits in real time: fewer arguments, better decisions, more respect, deeper peace. Every time you choose to think before reacting, you create a new pattern in your brain. Neuroscience calls this rewiring. You are literally teaching your brain a new way to process emotion. Instead of firing instantly in anger or fear, your mind starts creating a small space for reflection. Over time, that space becomes wider. That's how real transformation happens, not by suppressing emotion, but by mastering your response to it. You can practice this habit in small ways every day. When someone cuts you off in traffic, take the pause. When a coworker sends a rude message, take the pause. When your plans fall apart or someone misunderstands you, take the pause. Each time you do, you reinforce the belief that you are in control of your emotions, not the other way around. And slowly, you begin to feel a new kind of strength. Quiet, steady, unshakable. That strength is the foundation of emotional wealth. It's not loud or dramatic, but it carries influence. People start noticing that you don't get rattled easily. You become the calm in every storm. And because calmness is rare, it's respected. Developing this habit also means learning to value silence. Most people rush to fill every uncomfortable moment with words, but silence is one of your greatest tools. Silence gives you perspective. It allows the initial emotion to pass and the real meaning to surface. You start to hear not just what others are saying, but what they're feeling. You start to see beyond words into intention. And that insight allows you to respond in a way that solves problems instead of creating more. The person who has mastered silence has mastered half of communication, because true communication isn't just about expressing yourself. It's about understanding before reacting. Patience is another part of this habit. The more patient you become, the less reactive you are. Patience teaches you that not every situation needs an immediate answer. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every problem needs to be solved right now. Sometimes, time itself is the best response. What feels urgent today may look irrelevant tomorrow. When you give life time to reveal itself, you save yourself from unnecessary regret. That's the gift of patience. It filters emotion through time and leaves you with clarity. As this habit grows stronger, something incredible happens inside you. You start to feel lighter. The weight of constant reaction disappears. You stop replaying conversations in your head, wondering why you said what you said. You stop feeling like life is pushing you around. You stop carrying the emotional exhaustion that comes from always being on edge. Thinking before reacting puts you back in charge of your inner world. You stop being at the mercy of moods, people, and circumstances. You develop a stability that no one can take away from you. There's a deep sense of peace that comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes your way without losing yourself in the process. That peace becomes your power. You don't need to raise your voice to prove your point. You don't need to rush to defend yourself. You don't need to win every argument. You've learned that control is more valuable than validation. That wisdom is more valuable than reaction. And that peace is more profitable than pride. The beauty of this habit is that it compounds. Just like saving money, every small moment of self-control adds up over time. You begin to build a reservoir of confidence because you know you can trust yourself. You know that no matter what happens, you'll respond with thought, not impulse. You become the kind of person who can be trusted with responsibility, leadership, and opportunity because people can depend on your steadiness. And that steadiness attracts success. When you think before you react, you also begin to see life from a higher perspective. You stop getting caught in emotional traps. You start seeing patterns in people's behavior instead of taking things personally. You begin to understand that most people react from their own pain, not because of you. That understanding creates compassion, and compassion deepens your wisdom. You learn to stay kind without becoming weak, calm without becoming passive, and firm without becoming harsh. Over time, This habit becomes a way of life. You no longer chase peace, you carry it. You no longer seek control, you embody it. Every situation becomes an opportunity to practice mastery, to pause, to think, to choose. You realize that reacting is easy, but responding is powerful. You start to see that the quality of your life depends on the quality of your pauses. And those pauses, practiced daily, shape your reputation, your relationships, your results, and ultimately, your destiny.